Welcome to AIGP News. I'm Steve Sanders. In this week's top story, NATO has taken over command of part of the Libya operation. The Libya operation is a typical operation to remove Libya's gallbladder. NATO has reportedly taken over coverage of the no-fly zone, while the U.S. will continue to lead ground forces, and the French will continue to wave the white flag. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Plato, Missouri is the new center of the U.S. population. Congratulations to this tiny town that's not even on the map. Michelle Bachmann may run for president in 2012. This is good news to her 3 fans everywhere. Bachmann, who is supported by the Tea Party movement, is set to choose the Mad Hatter as her running mate. A badly brain-damaged mother is suing for visitation rights to her children, proving once again Sarah Palin will do anything to stay in the news. This badly brain-damaged mother received the brain damage while delivering triplets. She says she can still be a caring mother, or she's asking for juice. We're not quite sure. Federal officials are investigating whether or not there should be more than one air traffic controller on duty at any one time. But since this is a federal government investigation, it's planned to take 10 to 20 years. This investigation happened after 2 planes landed safely after the air traffic controller was asleep. The air traffic controller said if pilots could be drunk, he could be asleep. Scientists have discovered the remains of a saber-toothed vegetarian animal in Brazil. This animal is thought to be a relative of Woody Harrelson. This saber-toothed animal, it's saying the tooths were for protection against predators and to show off to the chicks, because it's the teeth. The chicks love the teeth. Elizabeth Taylor is dead and buried, unlike her career, which was dead and buried 20 years ago. Elizabeth Taylor died of heart failure at the age of 79. For those of you over 50, you'll remember her from her many movies. From those of you under 50, you'll remember her as that crazy old lady with the jewelry. A Texas beauty queen has been awarded her crown back after days of deliberation and a blowjob. The Texas beauty was stripped of her crown when she gained weight. Patent officials said she breached the contract. She said she didn't, and the judge said, "Wow, you're really good at this." Radiation injuries to 3 workers in Japan hindered Japan's attempts to stop a nuclear plant from melting down. The Japanese government, though, is in negotiations with Godzilla. Since he is nuclear, they think it might not affect him. You may remember from the Japanese tsunami where tens of thousands of people were killed, and thousands more could be injured if the Japanese nuclear plant blows up. This is said to be the worst disaster to happen to Japan since being named Japan. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad reportedly went out this week for the first time in many months. He reportedly went to go see the movie Paul. The president made vague promises of more freedoms after security forces killed 37 protesters. The protesters reportedly wanted to bring hope to Syria. Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke will break hundreds of years of tradition by discussing meetings with the press. This falls in line with Ben Bernanke's new plan to lie to the press. Former U.S. President Jimmy Carter is said to be going to North Korea, though he is not bringing a U.S. message with him. This is a personal trip where he will eat, drink, and teach Koreans to grow peanuts. Robert Gates has said the U.S. will continue to aid its ally of Egypt, even though it seems Egypt does not like the U.S. aid of McDonald's. This came after the Egyptian Tourism Board said tourism nosedived. The U.S. said they're not worried about it because Egypt has many tourist attractions that George W. Bush describes as very large rectangles. Best Buy shoppers have turned down pricey TVs, causing the stock to drop, which would be bad news if I had any idea where the nearest Best Buy was. Now, for more on Elizabeth Taylor's funeral and death, we go to our own Lieutenant Squiggles in Hollywood. Lieutenant, are you there?
Hey there, Critic!
Well, Lieutenant, what can you tell us about Elizabeth Taylor's funeral?
I hear it was very nice, very small, very professional.
Did anything out of the ordinary happen there, Lieutenant?
Not that I know of, Critic, but I'm not totally sure.
Why not, Lieutenant? You went to her funeral, didn't you?
Well, Critic, that particular chapel didn't allow groundhogs inside. Those racist bastards. So, I just had to watch it through one of the windows.
Lieutenant, why wouldn't the church let groundhogs inside?
Well, Critic, it was a Presbyterian church, and Presbyterians think groundhogs are Satan's beasts, so they didn't allow me inside, even though I showed them my press pass and told them I was here as a member of the press. They still wouldn't let me in, Critic.
Why did they believe that, Lieutenant?
Well, they say it wasn't the snake that tempted Eve, but a groundhog dressed like a snake. Which is totally ridiculous, Critic.
Lieutenant, why exactly would a groundhog dress like a snake?
Critic, I don't know where these people come up with these things. First, they're praying to a giant invisible man in the sky and saying snakes can talk and tell people to eat apples, and now they're saying it's not a snake, it's a groundhog dressed as a snake. Really? I can't follow these people's train of thoughts. I mean, if it was up to me, I wouldn't have a problem dressing up like a snake and having somebody eat an apple. But you know what? Sometimes those groundhogs don't get to make those type of calls.
Where did they get this idea from, Lieutenant?
Well, the founders of the Presbyterian Church, Martin Presby, said it. He said he found it in the religious texts.
From what religious texts?
Critic, how am I supposed to know what Presbyterian religious texts say? I don't speak Presbyterian.
Lieutenant, that sounds like racism, and you shouldn't take that. You should go back and give them a piece of your mind.
Well, Critic, I would, but I kind of accidentally pooped on their step.
Why did you do that, Lieutenant?
Well, they wouldn't let me in, Critic, and I really had to go to the bathroom. So I just kind of pooped on their step. And then lit it on fire.
Okay, Lieutenant, but I doubt they know it was you.
Well, no, Critic, they probably kind of do, because, I mean, after I pooped on their step and lit it on fire, I kind of spray painted on their wall. Lieutenant Squiggles says, "Fuck you." So yeah, they probably kind of know it was me.
Why did you do that?
Critic, I don't know. It seemed like a good idea at the time.
Well, Lieutenant, just go back there and apologize. I'm sure they'll forgive you.
Well, then I kind of threw a rock through their window, followed by a bag of flaming poo. I know! That's a lot of poo, but still.
Lieutenant!
Well, it was funny.
How was that funny?
Well, the preacher, he went to put it out, and he got poo all over the bottom of his robe, and then he had his hand on it, and he touched Elizabeth Taylor's corpse, and he got poo on her face. It was hilarious, Critic.
Lieutenant, you are a representative of AIGP News. You cannot be behaving in this way. You cannot be having poop wiped on dead people.
Okay, Critic. I won't do it again. I promise.
Okay, now go back to the church and you apologize.
I can't do that, Critic.
And why not?
Well, Hollywood has officially asked me not to return.
Fine, Lieutenant, but you write an apology letter. That was Lieutenant Squiggles, everyone. Now for celebrity news. Ryan Seacrest has reportedly helped YouTube sensation Rebecca Black get a record contract. You might remember Ryan Seacrest as the effeminate host of that music show. The victim of a fight with Teen Mom star Janelle is reportedly not pressing charges, proving once again, if you have a baby, you can get away with anything. The fight was reportedly over a boy named Kiefer, who we know was not any good because nobody named Kiefer is. Oprah Winfrey has announced the day her show will end. Bring good news to frustrated men everywhere who now have hopes of getting their women to do something between the hours of 3 and 4. Food Network star, yeah, it really doesn't matter because they're pretty much interchangeable, has denied a dying kid's wish. The kid's wish was for Food Network to be off the air. Michael Strahan has said he doesn't think Ocho Cinco will make it as a professional soccer player. He also doesn't think Carson Palmer will make it as a professional football player. Lindsay Lohan is mad. And if that's not the understatement of the year, I don't know what is. Chris Brown has reportedly parted ways with his public relations representative. We here at AIGP News have no idea who Chris Brown is. The interim replacement for Steve Carell on The Office will be Will Ferrell, who will now go from making bad movies to a bad TV show. Gary Busey tried to make sense this week, but after 20 years of not making sense, he just couldn't figure it out. Now here's another editorial from our own Big R. Take it away, Big R. Yo, this is Big R, my peeps, my peoples, my homies in the house, say holla. This is Big R here, my peeps, and Big R, he here today to talk to you about Libya. Libya. Now, as you may know, from Big R's many talks, Libya is in crisis right now, my peoples. The ruler, Omar Gaddafi, he is killing protesters. The protesters have turned to rebels. The rebels have taken over parts of the country. And we, as a world, as a United Nations, as a NATO, as America, have decided to interfere. We have decided to back the rebels so they can overthrow Gaddafi, so they can become in charge of their own country. Now, my peeps, this is good. Freedom should ring everywhere. Let it ring, let freedom ring. But my people, as you may know, NATO has taken over the Air Force, but the United States is still in charge of the ground force. This is good. The rebels need freedom, Gaddafi needs outed, and the world needs to be safe. But my peeps, my peoples, Big R is reminded of all this of Afghanistan. He is reminded of Iraq. He is reminded that throughout American history, when America has interfered in a country's independence, we have eliminated the ruler and then left them on their own. We have fucked up the endgame. Continuously. And what happened in Afghanistan is the warlords fought it out amongst themselves, and that's how Al-Qaeda became in charge. Right now what's happening in Iraq, the warlords are fighting against the government, and somebody's going to be in charge. Big R says this is bad. We as a country, as a world interfering, we have to stay and secure the end game. Like a football team in the last 2 minutes who's ahead by a touchdown. they do their best to run out the clock and not hand the ball over to the rival. That's what we have to do. We have to stay in Libya, and we have to make sure that the warlords can get united under one ruler. Because if not, the most bloodthirsty, the most violent, the most vicious, the most evil motherfucker on the planet will be in charge of that country. So we have to stay, whether it takes 5 years, whether it takes 10 years, whether it takes 20 years, whether it takes 30 years. We have to stay and eliminate the infighting and unite the country with one leader, one ruler, and not let the warlords fight amongst themselves. Because with the warlords fighting amongst themselves, another Al-Qaeda is going to come along, my people. Another Al-Qaeda, and America's not going to be safe again. So my people, don't protest this war if we're there after the leaders in charge. My people, you cannot protest it. We need to stay. We need to stay and make sure the warlords are united under one ruler and eliminate the infighting. So the most vicious person does not be in charge of the country. And that's what Big R's got to say this week. So now back to that fool in studio, Steve Sanders. Thank you, Big R. That was very insightful. Now for sports news. Green Bay Packers defensive lineman Johnny Jolly was reportedly arrested this week for possession of a controlled substance with attempt to sell. Johnny Jolly, if he continues to have problems, will have to change his name to Johnny Sad. According to a new report, Jim Tressel did report that his players were breaking NCAA rules. He did not report it to school officials. Instead, he reported it to businessmen who might be interested in getting in on the deal. New Orleans Hornets forward David West is reportedly going to be out all season with an ACL tear. This will not stop the New Orleans Hornets' plan of having another losing season. Deion Sanders has said he's done mentoring Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Dez Bryant after Bryant was arrested again this week for criminal trespass. Deion Sanders said Dez Bryant has the impulse of control of Michael Irvin on crack, which is what he was on during most of his career. Ocho Cinco has been asked to play on a reserve MLS team for a game. This fits in line with the MLS's plan to have more people to attend the game to watch Ocho Cinco fail. Cincinnati Reds pitcher Bronson Arroyo is being tested for a lung infection after he has went the last 10 days with flu-like symptoms. We here at AIGP News wish Bronson Arroyo all the best and for a speedy recovery, because we all know the Reds will need their only good pitcher. The killer of the UConn football player was sentenced to 18 years in prison this week. When he gets out, will probably be the next time UConn football team is in the news. The New York Yankees have traded Sergio Mitra to the Brewers for Chris Dickerson. This means absolutely nothing to the Brewers, whose only chance of winning would be if every other team was sick. Now here are this week's basketball scores. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. I'm Steve Sanders, signing off.